The civilization of the Tigris-Euphrates River Basin. In West Asia, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow southward into the Persian Gulf. They are like a pair of twin brothers with different temperaments and personalities. The Euphrates is gentle and slow, flowing steadily from north to south, while the Tigris is more turbulent and unpredictable. The alluvial plain formed by the lower reaches of the two rivers is called Mesopotamia, which means between the rivers in Greek. Westerners refer to this land as the Crescent, due to its shape resembling a crescent moon, and we also call this region the land between the two rivers. Today's West Asia is wealthy due to its oil production, but at the beginning of human civilization, it was poor in resources and materials, leading to constant warfare and migration. It is remarkable that the first glimmer of human civilization rose on this land, where the world's earliest writing was born, and the world's earliest cities were established. How did all this happen? The civilization of the two rivers mainly originated near the Persian Gulf, around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which is roughly the area of present-day Iraq and Syria near the Persian Gulf. Well, can you tell me the time period? It was around 4000 to 3000 BC. In fact, it should be from 5000 BC to 300 BC, spanning almost 4000 years of history. All civilizations have developed alongside great rivers. Why is that? Because they are excellent for farming, animal husbandry, and agriculture. With food, when it is stored, humans have time to think and make tools. In this way, human civilization has gradually developed. The land between the two rivers, a plain formed by the alluvial deposits of the rivers, so it is even more abundant in food production, which led to the later brilliant civilizations, such as the Sphinx. Let me correct a mistake here. We've been talking for a while, and I've made a mistake. Indeed, we just saw a picture of a very majestic human head, with Arab diggers next to it, looking very frightened. This is a real event that happened in the world. It was when the Assyrian civilization, part of the Tigris-Euphrates civilization, was excavated. One day, the Arab workers suddenly called the archaeologist and said, "Sir, we have found a god. We dare not dig anymore." The archaeologist rushed to the pit and discovered that it was not a god, but a statue of an Assyrian soldier. You can see his majestic beard, wearing a beautiful helmet, and the carving is very exquisite and simple. This is just one aspect of the Assyrian civilization. This soldier was actually attached to a pillar or wall of the temple, and there were countless such large statues in the entire temple. Looking at this photo, it is indeed a human face with two wings, but you can see his huge body, which is actually a bull. Why do many ancient civilizations use such majestic, huge, and transformative figures like the Transformers, like the Decepticons in Transformers? I think it's the same, probably because the strongest thing in the two rivers at the time was the bull. Yes, and the bull is the most important tool in agriculture. So, humans are the most intelligent of all things. There is also a saying, like a bull in business, like a tiger with wings, meaning if a bull had wings, it would be even more formidable. So, I think this is how the god came to be. So, when you see ancient statues, there are few weak gods, which could not exist in the ancient temples. This is their worship of strong power and infinite wisdom. I can add 2 points. Mr. Sun has these 2 points to add. The first point is still what? It is our so-called materialism, that we are the bull body and human face, possibly due to the translation. This image is because the local area may have the most fierce and powerful animal, right? Yes. 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 Including the translation, there are wings in real life, so they will think of adding wings to this god. The second point is what? Such a combination of things, in fact, we have in all civilizations. In addition to worshipping heroes, the Sumerians also devoutly worshipped gods, praying to the gods for good weather, good harvests, and peace and prosperity in the country. In various Sumerian city-states, the most magnificent buildings are temples. Each city-state has a patron god, and the temple of this patron god is the economic center between the city-states and even between the Cimmerian region and the surrounding areas. During this period, the multi-layered tower-like buildings at the highest point of the temple were a characteristic of the ancient Tigris Euphrates civilization architecture. Nebuchadnezzar II is equivalent to Caesar in the Greek world. Nebuchadnezzar loved his wife very much, and his wife was a Mede. The Medes were a powerful military force, and only to the Babylonian kingdom led by Nebuchadnezzar II. The most famous king of the Neo-Babylonian kingdom was Nebuchadnezzar II, who ascended to the throne on September 7, 605 BC. He was the king recorded in the Bible during the Babylonian captivity. In his spare time for campaigns, Nebuchadnezzar used almost all of the country's financial reserves for the construction of Babylon. The famous Hanging Gardens are said to have been built by Nebuchadnezzar for his Median queen. Nebuchadnezzar ordered tens of thousands of workers to work around the clock, 24 hours a day without rest. They built a hanging garden. The secular understanding of the origin of the hanging gardens is that they are actually flying in the sky. But in fact, it is not. It is just that the translation of Greek was wrong, and its academic name is called terraced garden. The full name is terraced architectural garden. But this garden is still quite high from the ground, about 20 meters high. Regarding the large-scale projects, we have many in China. These large-scale projects, yes. How are these large-scale projects built? The emperor starts building from the day he ascends to the throne. Yes, that's right. If he is in power for 20 years, he will build for 20 years. Yes, if he is in power for 30 years, he will build for 30 years. Often, the emperor who died after a few years is very upset, and the tomb has not been built yet, and it is lost. In our civilization in the past 1,000 years, it has been very developed. Still, in such a situation, how could there be a king in the Tigris Euphrates river basin thousands of years ago, saying, "My dear, I love you, I will build a hanging garden for you, and you will see it in a year"? This is impossible. Suppose he really built this garden and then went to find his lover, the old lady. "How do you like this garden?" The old lady said, "I can't see it. I'm all cataracts, right? It is very likely to be like this, which is the so-called Rome was not built in a day. In fact, the hanging garden itself has a foundation, because in the Tigris Euphrates civilization, there is a very strange place, which is what? All the buildings are not built and then another group of people push them down. The hanging garden is like this. The hanging garden is actually the Assyrians who plundered wealth and craftsmen in continuous wars, and continuously built unparalleled palaces. How to explain this? This hanging garden is what kind of situation? The point I want to understand is that it is built in a step structure. Yes, and each layer is paved with asphalt, and then it should be covered with soil, and then plants are planted on it. It seems to be a very affectionate king. In order to make his concubine smile, this is also my little understanding of the hanging gardens. Later, there is something we need to look at. What is it? It's the Tower of Babel. Before talking about the Tower of Babel, I want to ask, what do you know about the Tower of Babel? It is said that it is in the Old Testament of the Bible. There is a story about this tower, saying that he is the city of Babylon that offended God, and it seems to be related to this tower. The Tower of Babel in the Old Testament of the Bible, the city of Babylon that offended God. The ancient Babylonians were very smart, very wise, and their action was very strong. Then one day, they said that God looks at us in the sky every day. Let's go up and have a look. These people united and built a city, building higher and higher. At that time, their language was the same, so they built the Tower of Babel very quickly. As a result, God cast a spell, and all these Babylonian builders spoke different languages. The next morning, when they got up and saw that I don't understand what you are saying, and you don't even know my name, this has caused a great misunderstanding and estrangement. From the Tower of Babel, what can we derive? It is from the issue of construction, that is, some characteristics of our culture, that is, the civilization derived from the Tigris Euphrates river basin. What is the difference between the civilization of West Asia and our civilization? It is because there was no Christianity at the time. Far from it. It was because of the construction of the Tower of Babel, these buildings, these legends, that they were later absorbed into Christian doctrine. Yes, and it makes a lot of sense. The executive force of humanity lies in one word, which is communication. If there is a lack of communication, even if we have a few people, there is no executive force. So it makes a lot of sense. You change your language, and language change actually reflects the connotation, which is to let you lack communication. When the Neo-Babylonian kingdom regained control over the southern region of the Tigris Euphrates River basin, it was already 600 or 700 years later. The glory of the Neo-Babylonian kingdom exceeded that of the period ruled by Hammurabi. The creators of the Neo-Babylonian kingdom were the Chaldeans, a nation worthy of a significant mention in the history of science. They compiled and organized the Babylonian Chronicles, which recorded monthly astronomical phenomena, commodity prices, water levels, and weather conditions, and are among the earliest astronomical records in the world. The astronomical knowledge of the Neo-Babylonians was very advanced. We are all familiar with arithmetic, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But computers use binary. The Sumerian civilization was genius. They used a base 60 system, which is hard for us to imagine. Yes, it's too strange. Their astronomers observed the sky and were able to determine that 60 seconds make a minute, 60 minutes make an hour, and 24 hours make a day, and 365 days make a year. It is verifiable that in the ancient Babylonian calendar, they calculated a year to be 365 days, 6 hours, 15 minutes, and 41 seconds, which is only 26 minutes more than what modern science has calculated. Because they were also an agricultural civilization, the calendar was very important to them. They invented the base 60 time system and also invented the decimal system from 1 to 10. These inventions laid a solid foundation for their more brilliant creations and technologies. Speaking of this brilliant civilization, I actually have a counterexample, which is that at the time, because it was a slave society, there were a large number of so-called groups, burials. You think about it, in 5000 BC, 7,000 years ago, the number of people buried at the time reached 70 or 80, more than 100, which is unimaginable. And these 70 or 80 people were all attendants, princesses, and captains of the guard of the deceased king. In simple terms, all the elite of this country were buried. However, such a brilliant civilization, such a prosperous civilization, why did it decline later, and it has not risen again? We will talk about it next time.